All right, we are on. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Our guest for today is Dr. Wells. She's PhD professional coach. Along with that, she's also hypno and a professional mediator based in New York. And she runs her own practice called Connections, where she helps individuals, leaders, and organizations make sense of patterns driving their behaviors. So, Dr. Wells, thank you so much for being here today, and we welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you, Un. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And my first question is I think it will connect with your introduction. You work at the intersection of hypnosis, coaching, and mediation. It's a unique combination. How did you arrive at this?
So, I started my career in the nonprofit world in education. And when I shifted my career from doing that, so I'd worked my way up the ladder to assistant director and knew that it wasn't really fulfilling me. So I wanted to transition my career. So I went to coaching school, got my certificates in three or four different areas of coaching. I really didn't know what I wanted to specialize in at that point. Certainly, I had been speaking for a very long time. I knew motivational speaking was something that I wanted to do, and I just wanted to help people. And through a series of serendipitous events, I guess you could call them, I ended up doing a lot of executive coaching and realized I was sort of in over my head with my very, very, very first client was a large hospitality company, 9 or 10 sites, catering business, corporate dining, and it was a family run business with a lot of dysfunction at the top. And I realized about 3 months into the coaching contract, I was in way over my head. So I thought, okay, I need to really increase my level of knowledge within conflict management. I didn't really know much about mediation at the time. I went to New York State Alternate Dispute Resolution Association, so it's called NISDRA. They were the go-to organization in New York at the time for alternate resolution, also training. And so I thought, okay, they will know where to send me. So they were using Mediation Works International at the time. And I think they've changed the name now because it's been sold to Eckerd College. Eckerd College has a large conflict management center. And anyway, so I went through them to get my 40 hours worth of certified mediation training. And while I was there, I just stayed on a couple extra days and certified as a trainer. I mean, educating is really, at the top of my list. It's got my heart and soul, and just, passing knowledge, being a facilitator and passing knowledge on to people is really my thing. So I thought, yeah, this is great. So that's how mediation intersected with my coaching. And it did help a lot. It was, we moved the knowledge I gained there, added to the knowledge I had already as a coach, really helped us move forward. And that's how my coaching career kind of got started. By the time I finished that contract, I had 4 or 5 clients just through word of mouth, all small family run businesses, small, under 100 employees, and all different sectors. Actually, it was healthcare, hospitality, technology, telephone, essentially. And, very, very interesting, all interesting. But again, all family run businesses, all dysfunction at the top. So they needed, and then the technology company that I worked for had a lot of young professionals coming into the field, and brilliant, brilliant young minds, and needed management training. So I was able to actually incorporate that into some of the learning and development coaching I was doing. And so at that time, I decided that I wanted to work for a firm. So I interviewed at a small consulting firm actually here in upstate New York and got the people oriented job. I was a director of talent development as it started out. And so I was doing a lot of learning and development, a lot of training of the team, but I was also running teams of facilitators. And then as I got promoted in that company, I began doing a lot of business consulting. So I was a senior consultant, and I was going out into these small businesses that were all over the map, essentially. Some family run, some not family run. Again, all they're micro-sized businesses. So, 7 to 25 employees, and our largest client had 100 employees. But again, mix of generations, mix of formal and non-formal education, technical education, along with, we focus primarily in the optical world. So opticians, optometrists, and then everything in between. So I focus primarily on the people side, and I did not just the business consulting, but all of the personal development coaching. And at that time I thought, you know what, there's more I can learn here. And so that's when I decided that maybe, because a lot of what I was doing intersected, business affects personal, personal affects business, and I was living in that intersection. And so I thought, well, how can I'm constantly educating myself on the business side. How can I educate myself on the personal development side? And so I decided to take my hypnosis. Hypnosis was part of my original coaching school, and they just wasn't really a highlight. They taught you and then kind of let you go. But I thought, well, let me take that to the clinical level, and I can actually help folks when they're in pain, which affects what they do every day at work. And then I also took my mediation into the personal level and certified in marital mediation. So I started couples counseling, and that's very important when you have husband and wives working together, or husbands and wives and whatever, personal partners, and then actually a lot of that relationship coaching comes into play when you have generational families working together. So parents, children, siblings, all of that. And so really just developing the personal side of the coaching and my knowledge was kind of how that came in. And that came in much later. That was 2018 that I did that. And my dissertation is it focuses on reader and viewer reception. So it's my job to understand how you see the world around you, and then help you kind of move forward with changing those perceptions. So truly just adding, the type of hypnosis that I do is image therapy, essentially. And so adding that, I can do that with hypnosis or without. So adding that to my coaching allowed me to expand into the marketing area, as well as just leadership and practical professional business coaching, professionalism, client customer experience areas, things like that. So really, even though on the outside it seems like disparate areas, they kind of all melded together and created the perfect storm for me of knowledge.
Absolutely. The way you explained it, I think it all makes sense now. But
Yeah.
as I think you are right that at surface level they are seems like entirely different areas, entirely different domains, and every day we see folks working in one of those field and helping people in that. But I think you have created a good mix, and seems like it is helping a lot of people as well. So I
Yeah.
think it can be a hypnosis can be a good starting point for our discussion, that you use it as a tool. But for a lot of our listeners, or for people who are not very much educated on how hypnosis work, I think they might know a little bit about that from movies or from media. So if you have to explain it to somebody who does not have a lot of knowledge into hypnosis, how does it actually work at the psychological level? How will you go about explaining it?
Hypnosis is a heightened form of concentration within a heightened form of relaxation.
Mhm.
So you're not asleep. You're not you're not going to get up and cluck like a chicken. That's stage hypnosis. It is
Right.
a specialty unto itself, but it's something completely different. And if you aren't the type of person to stand on a table and cluck like a chicken, guess what? When you're focusing on hypnosis, that isn't going to happen either. So you're not going to do anything when you're under hypnosis that you wouldn't do without hypnosis. In fact, I've had many clients who wanted to try hypnosis for relaxation just because they've carried tension in different parts of their body, or they wanted to focus on mindfulness. So I do a lot of work, it's called emotional mapping with hypnosis, where people just get very, very focused in on where tension and where pain in their body locates in their body. And I teach them techniques. So everything we do with hypnosis, it's all learning. So if you decide to do hypnosis with me, I will teach you the technique to do it on your own when you're in a space of relaxation. So it's a lot shorter and focused effectiveness than, say, meditation. So a lot of people don't have the inclination to meditate, but they can focus a bit on more on hypnosis, because there are ways that we can, keep your mind from roaming. And people will be like, I can't meditate, I'm not going to sit there and think about nothing. Okay, that's fine. Let me give you something. There's an exercise you can do in your brain, right? So I teach them how to breathe and how to relax. And then we focus the mind in on something when they're in that heightened, they're very, very, very relaxed, and then they're heightened concentration on one thing. And even if that thing is your body, and if you, let's say, for example, carry pain or tension in your chest, and I get, or anxiety in my chest, I feel like my chest is tightening up. Okay, focus on that. What is it about that pain? Focus on the pain. Tell me about the pain. And then we find the one thing that is an anchor for the pain, and we change it. So move the pain. They'll be like, what? Move the pain. So take it from here in the center of your chest and move it to the right side of your chest. Can you do that? Yeah. And all of a sudden, the body goes, whoa, wait, that's not what we're used to. And it releases the pain. And it's not there anymore. So you can do that in 2 minutes. So it can be much more effective for certain people who just aren't, either they supplement their meditation with this kind of exercise, or they just do this kind of exercise. And it's brain work. Essentially, you're changing the neurons, the way the neurons move in your brain, and you're actually changing negative neural pathways into positive neural pathways. And it really does work that quickly. And it gives them also something that they can, let's say they're going into a meeting with their boss and their palms are sweating and they're breathing hard and their face is red. Hit the bathroom, 2 minutes in the bathroom, and, shut the stall door, you're private, close your eyes, do that exercise, out you come, and you're much more relaxed and much more focused for your meeting. Same thing with being at home. If there's tension at home with children or partners or spouses or whatever, you can do those. It does help take a moment, especially also, people have clients, they'll say, breathe, count to 10. Are you kidding? Like, I'm lucky if I can take a breath and not fall over, or count to 10. I've done that. Count to 50 doesn't work. These are kinds of things clients have said to me, and I chuckle and I'll say, okay, let's try something else. Same thing with images. I will have folks, and this is a really good one. Someone emailed me in a question about a breakup, and they were having such trouble with the breakup, they couldn't focus on their work, and they were a construction worker, and that's very important. I mean, you can't not be focused when you're working on, a job site. So, because it can be quite dangerous. So I said, okay, what is it about the breakup? My heart is, everybody has metaphors. My heart is constantly breaking whenever I think about this person. Tell me about the heart breaking. What's it look like? What's it sound like? What's it feel like? To the touch. If you could actually hold your heart in your hand, what's it feel like? So we go through this process and as this person described all of those things to me, I said, okay, can you change the heart from kind of that blood red to a softer red? Can you see stitches in the heart? Can you see, whatever else we did? And at the end, the person was like, that really worked. I didn't think about it at all. I was totally relaxed at work today. So So there are, and again, that is just a hypnotic technique. It's a technique we use in hypnosis to change the brain, but I certainly didn't want someone, you don't want someone trying to go into trance when they're driving or when they're on a construction site or when they're at work or when, right? I mean, you have to be safe and in a safe space to do that. But there are ways that you can take images and metaphors that we have every day and do small, simple changes. And it will change the neural pathway. And then you have a very different perspective of that issue.
Right. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think if we drive that to power of subconscious mind, and I think knowingly or unknowingly, all of us have a certain pattern in different situations in our relationships, in work, in leadership roles. So when someone comes to you and they are struggling to change their pattern, or more importantly they are struggling to understand their pattern, do you think that the way our subconscious mind is programmed has a big role in that? And what are your approaches and what advice you give to your students in order to start the reprogramming of subconscious mind for their betterment?
So it's a really, really good question. Thank you for asking that. So I'm going to give you two slightly but connected answers. The first answer is your subconscious mind, you will never change a pattern. I guess never say never, but you are not going to change a pattern unless your subconscious mind agrees with it. It just doesn't work. Right? People will say, I try to lose weight all day long, or I don't know why I'm so angry at work. I walk in the door and I feel angry. Okay, well, if your subconscious mind doesn't agree with why you should change that habit or pattern or behavior, it ain't going to happen. It's just not, right? The subconscious mind directs everything that we do. Our critical factor, our ego, our conscious mind explains everything. Our subconscious mind tells our conscious mind what is happening. And then the conscious mind will say, okay, well, this is why we do it. So that's why when you're working with coaches like me, we'll say, what's the first word that popped into your mind? That is typically your subconscious mind. And people ignore it because it doesn't make sense to their critical factor. It doesn't make sense. They can't explain it, so they skip over it. And I'll say, no. Try again. First word that pops in. Well, the first word that popped in was this, and it makes no sense. But let's work with that. So there's that, right? You until your subconscious, we can convince your subconscious mind, we can talk to it and explain it. But until it decides that we have something worth listening to, we just have to keep trying, right? Eventually it does. Now, with hypnosis, so if you were to draw this explanation, you draw a circle, right? And typically that as your subconscious mind. So that's the egg, okay? And it's closed. So your critical factor makes sure that everything stays protected. 17 directives of the unconscious mind. Prime directive, protect the body at all costs. Okay. So it's going to protect that part of you, that higher self, right? Your hypnosis will just, and even coaching with a bit of focused work will just open that egg slightly so we can talk directly to the subconscious mind. Conscious mind is still there. We never put it away. We want it to hear everything we're doing, and it's got a job to protect you. So, but we just want to go directly to the subconscious mind. So there's that. On the flip side, sometimes you have to change the behavior because we are not our behaviors. The behavior is criminal. The person is not criminal. So the behavior makes us feel, right? The walking in, or there's some sort of trigger that makes us feel angry. And this also pulls in mediation, right? Necessary knowledge about conflict management. There's a retaliatory cycle that we go through. There's a trigger, we feel an emotion, we have an action, and then an outcome. The only thing you can change, I mean, certainly you can work on filters, you can work on the triggers, you can remove them, but how many of us can live a sterile life? We just can't. So rather than focusing on the trigger, we focus on the behavior. Because our emotions are true and good. They give us sometimes wrong reflexes, not because the reflex is bad or that we shouldn't have them. It's very human and we all have them. So why not just understand the reflex, because that's our true emotion and it's okay. You accept the emotion, but we change the behavior. So as we alter the behavior, go in a different door. Our brain goes, whoa, wait. Now we can talk to the subconscious mind, right? And now we can take the work a step further. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah.
Perfectly. Thank you. So
You're welcome.
as part of your coaching, do you also work on habit building as well? Especially, I think high performance is everyone wants to become high performer these days, and I think high performance is yeah, again, I may be wrong in my humble opinion. One big part of being a high performer is a good pattern or good uh, habit overall in your life and day to day work. Is this also part of your methodology as well, that as part of your process, as part of your methodology, you work on building certain habits in your students?
Yeah. So I take a different perspective a bit. Yes, and first we try to identify, okay, first the goals, right? Why do you think you're not a high performer? Someone's obviously told you that. Are you a high performer or are you a high potential? So in leadership, they're different. You need both, and some people are both. But some people are just those folks that they are your workhorses, right? They will outperform anyone on your team. Good, solid work, but they won't necessarily be potential for leadership. So how do we reward that work differently than we reward a high potential person who can be trained to move in a different direction within the company? Company needs both to be really at its best, right? And teams to work at their best need both. So first we recognize and we identify. Once we identify, let's say there is a habit that someone just can't get themselves to do, and that's what their boss wants them to do to be what they consider a high performer, air quotes. We dive into the reasons why they don't get there, why they can't create that habit. And then I take a cue from the addiction world. There is a concept in addiction coaching and addiction therapy that says, it's an adage that says, everyone's going to fall off the wagon, to be colloquial about it. The question is, how long are you off the wagon before you get back on? So if you fall off the wagon in your addiction and you're off the wagon a month before you can get yourself back on the wagon, whatever on the wagon means for you, there's lots of, right?
Right.
The next time you fall off the wagon, if you can only stay off the wagon for 2 weeks before you get back on instead of a month, right? You're continuing to improve. You're getting better. Okay.
Right.
So when we are creating a new habit, often you can trade up habits you want to change for a new habit, but it's okay. What is the habit, first of all? And does your subconscious mind really want to do the habit? Do you really feel like this habit is something that you want? Because maybe there's a different habit that will net you the same result that's better for you. So there's a lot of analysis there that we go through with the individual, and a lot of awareness. And sometimes people will say, I just think that's stupid. Like, why do I have to take 3 steps when I've figured out a way to take 1 step and get the same result? Okay, let's Go back to your boss. Let's explain that and find out, because that's a process issue. So now we're back into the business world. Why isn't your boss listening to? Maybe it's the way you're presenting this to your boss, or maybe there's something else beyond your boss that can't change. So how do we work through that? Okay. So let's say there's nothing there, and they just say, this is dumb because this is what I think every time I go to do that habit. All right, well, let's start changing the thinking. Let's find a different habit that you are okay with. We can change negative patterns. We can change negative behaviors around what needs to happen by working from the result backwards. Okay, so if A plus B equals C and C is the result, what happens just before you achieve C? Well, this. B and 5/8. Okay, well, what happens just before you achieve B and 5/8? And what happens just before that? And just before that? And eventually we find the glitch in the process. And we can change that. You see, so we're not, a lot of people we get caught in that all or nothing pattern. It's very human. And they just try to change it. Well, why can't I just do this? If I do it for 30 days, it's going to make them no. Because if your brain and your subconscious doesn't agree with that, you're going to go 30 days 10 times and you're still not going to create that habit. And then you're going to get frustrated and walk away. So if we work backwards and we find that glitch in the system, and we fix it or change it, because mostly we don't need to be fixed. We just need to be altered a bit here or there, right? And make it more authentic to the human that's trying to create the new habit, falls into place pretty quickly.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And I think it is very important. I think one point you raised resonate very well. My understanding is that our subconscious, as it cannot differentiate between what's real and what's not real, if it believes on something, I think it start moving in that direction. So as we
That's exactly,
believe that,
that's exactly right. The brain it can't differentiate past, present, future, real, not real. It's all real to the brain. So,
right.
right?
Makes sense. So, if we talk a little bit about the conflict resolution, I think sounds like you're very passionate about this area and you work in that. So, what are the typical reasons? I think you may have seen some common patterns among different sorts of conflicts that happens in a relationship or at workplaces. So, what are the common causes, in your opinion, for conflicts?
Yeah. I probably can narrow it down to two primary: process improvement, different in the tech world than it is in the human world. And I'll explain that in a second. And the second one is organizational or situational awareness. So sometimes we don't, as leaders, or even as teams don't necessarily need a leader to do this themselves. I've definitely coached teams that they can, some very small things, work on awareness themselves. I'm often working so hard in my own channel. I know you're there and I know you're really important to the team and I know your work's really important and my work depends on it. All of our work is interconnected. But I don't always focus on what you're doing. I don't always necessarily understand how what you're doing completely connects to my work. That's what I mean by situational or organizational awareness, right? It's a key component, a key competency for emotional intelligence. And all too often, I find teams are working so quickly, they just either can't understand because they don't have time to understand what everybody else is doing and how it relates to them. They just know they have deadlines and they have to get to it. So I force them to slow down and we redo a rotation and we put me in your shoes, me in your role, in some fashion, not necessarily physically doing your work every day, because a lot of specialists you can't, but I can metaphorically put myself there and role play through what would happen if you're not carrying your weight, you're not doing your job, right? And how that would affect mine. and come to that natural conclusion. You got 5 people on a team, you do that with all 5 people. How am I really understanding what you're doing and the issues that you face every day, the nitty-gritty stuff, right? I've forgotten his name now. Alan, I'm going to get his last name wrong. McNally, maybe, forget it. But the one that took over Ford, essentially how he changed Ford when he took over. He wrote a book about it, and I wish I could remember now. Of course, it skips my brain. But that's essentially what he did. He had each department start to understand what the other department did and how your department could help my department, how my department could help the next department accomplish. And it just opens up those conversations and creativity so that problem solving happens naturally. Okay. So on the flip side of that, so situational organizational awareness, and then the second one is process improvement. And when I say process improvement, I'll give you an example. I had a team. I was working with a team. Actually, this was a team in Canada, and they were tearing each other apart. I went up. I mean, it was tough. And I went up in person. This was before COVID. And I went to the practice, and I had a whole day planned to facilitate, and we were really going to just chow at it, right? And within the first 10, 15 minutes of the day, of the morning, we were round robining. I always do a check-in, and someone started crying. Okay, well, I always carry tissues with me because there's always someone emotional, because this is deep work and it's very tense and everybody's nervous. So we always have someone that, either gets angry or starts to tear up. So I passed the tissues, and the next thing I know, someone else. And before I knew it, like literally half the team was in tears, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, what is this? This is, and I was like, okay, we're going to stop and we're going to go a different route. So I asked a different question, and I got all of a sudden a different answer. And then someone else popped in and said, well, wait a minute, this is blah, blah, blah. And then this is, and I said, okay, what you have here is a process problem. Let's take it up a notch. We're going to go a bit more strategic with this conversation, because we're all down here in operations, and now things aren't working. And because everybody's trying to follow this process, it's not working, it's broken, and you're tearing each other apart. Instead of stepping back, taking it a step up right to the strategic level where we can solve the problem and look at the process in a different way, completely changed the entire, they all apologized to each other. They all of a sudden had these huge aha moments, and we got creative, and the rest of the day was solving that process. Because once we solved that process, it opened up another area that, down the domino line, we needed to fix that and fix that. It was quite amazing. I really didn't have to do a whole lot. They did. I just facilitated the conversations and, soothed the hurt feelings, because we just, there's just, couldn't recognize through all the fog of emotion that there was really something they could do when we started focusing on the process. And so that's what I mean by it's a bit different than in the tech world. I think the technical folks do that kind of on their own. They always look at the process first. Okay, if this is broken, something down the line is right. And so when I'm coaching tech folks, often I have to work on the personal, because they would rather not talk to humans. They just want to, they're like, humans are the problem. If we can fix them and make them work like a computer, we're good. We're all, so we do take it a little bit differently. But for the most part, I think, and that there again, it brings in the awareness. Okay, what do you do to fix a problem with a computer? Can we bring that into the human world and use some of that strategy because it works for you over there? It can work for you over here. So.
Makes sense. Thank you. I know we are a little over time, but I have one final question, and it's so important from at least from my perspective. I think we are transitioning into a world which may look different with respect to workplaces, because all the technical advancements that's happening, AI that is coming more and more. I think it's going to change almost all industries in one way or another. So the future workplaces, I think no one is 100% certain how they will look alike. And do you agree with this thought that the need for personal development, need for understanding our patterns, need for having skill set to resolve conflicts will go high in this new world, new workplace world? Or do you feel that technology is also going to help us address these challenges or these situations better? What is your take, or what is your vote on this situation?
Yeah. I think there's always going to be a role for the human within our technological world. I think, in fact, some of what I see with AI now, so we'll just, use AI as an example. I think there's lots of other technological advancements happening, but this is good. I see a lot of feeling and human emotion being programmed into AI. It's just more predictable, if you will. And
Right.
so I think we can create relationships with the technology that keep the human elements in the forefront, but use what AI can say, let's say, or technology in general can do to supplement. So, for example, humans will always be humans and we will always have hot buttons because that's part of our
Right.
makeup.
Right.
So, a technological advancement might be able to point out, well, this might be a hot button or that might be a hot button. But you, as a human, are only ever going to be the one that can decide what it is for you. And so, how do you work with it together? So, I think it's new. It's a little scary. We don't know, right? We don't know how it's gonna. But I think if we embrace it and say, okay, how can I stay viable and create this relationship with the new technology and make it work for our needs, make it work for, right? I don't work for it. It sometimes works for me, but maybe if we work together,
Right.
we can head off some of, and that's going to look different in every situation,
Right.
right?
Makes
So
sense. Thank you. So if some of our listeners have to contact you for some of their coaching needs, what is the best way to reach out? Is it website or any other mediums you suggest?
yep, I have www.drgpwells.com, and you could certainly, there are contact pages there. You could certainly email, use a contact page, or you can email me directly. I am happy to answer any questions. And that's drgpwells@gmail.com. That's a private and confidential email. It comes directly to me. I'm happy to answer questions, or if you decide that you want to do some work with me.
And we will also put these links in our video description as well. So thank you so much. I think we had a great conversation. There is a lot still to discuss. Maybe we will do the episode 2 for this. But I really appreciate your time and you sharing your insight and wisdom.